All right, welcome to the home edition of Field Hockey Canada's one-on-one and interview series where we catch up with national team athletes and coaches. Today, I'm here with women's national team member Maddie Secco. Maddie played NCAA hockey for Stanford University and has been on the national team since 2011. Most recently, playing hockey in Belgium for Royal Victory. Maddie, welcome.
Hey, Kev. Thanks so much. Always a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm really excited to get this going today.
Awesome. Well, first and foremost, maybe we'll just do a little quarantine check-in and see, how you're doing, where you're at. Maybe you could just describe where you are, who you're with, if you're with anybody, and obviously such a bizarre and unprecedented time. What's a normal day look like for Maddie Secco?
Yeah, so I guess to back up a little bit, in March, I was overseas playing in Belgium. We were actually at the epicenter of the pandemic, so we decided to come home right away. I was actually with two other Canadian national teammates, Kathleen Leahy and Shanley Johnston, and we decided to quarantine ourselves in Qualcomm, up island, to keep others safe. And so we were there for 6 weeks. We did lots of working out, some cooking and baking. And then after that, I came home to Victoria. My family lives in Oak Bay, so currently I'm staying with my parents. And these days, I'm actually keeping quite busy. I'm doing still lots of baking, working out. My dad actually has created a pretty sweet home gym downstairs with a chin-up bar that comes out of the ceiling and some other little free weights, some bricks to do push-ups and things. And then I'm also in school, actually. So I'm just finishing up a certificate in business from Queen's University, which is through a partnership with the Smith School of Business and the Canadian Olympic Committee. So very fortunate to be doing that.
Awesome. So it sounds like you're staying relatively busy. Obviously, not what anyone predicted 2020 was going to look like. And maybe you could just talk about going from being basically a full-time athlete, training and playing and competing in Belgium, to now being essentially locked down at home with limited movements and limited travel. This new normal that we're in. Maybe you could just talk about how you're getting through it, and maybe on the activity side, what you're doing to sort of stay fit and stay in game shape if you can.
For sure, yeah. So it was definitely a transition at the beginning. As a professional athlete, I'm used to having a very full schedule and a regiment that I follow, going to practice many hours a day and weightlifting and spending time with teammates as well. So to go into isolation and to not have those scheduled things was really a change. But first of all, our Canadian national team has been staying connected a little bit. We've been doing online Zoom workouts together, so that's been really nice to stay connected and to have something scheduled for us. But we've also been doing some workouts that were assigned to us on our own. So I've been going to the track quite a bit to do some sprinting kind of interval style things. And that's been a big change because I'm so used to doing the cardio part on the field. And so going to a track, it's been kind of an exciting learning curve because you're able to see the splits that you're doing and measure the distances and everything, so you can really see improvement and how things are going that way. And then, as I touched on before, I've been getting pretty creative with the weights workouts, using some garden tools and bricks and big water jugs and things to lift weights and just keep moving and stay fit.
Yeah, everyone's just trying to make the best out of their current situation right now, so it's good to hear that you're getting creative. You mentioned that before you came back to Canada, you were playing in Belgium. I mean, we talked about that, and this is, I guess, would be your second consecutive year playing in Europe. Maybe you could just talk a little about the experience playing elite hockey in overseas in sort of a more competitive and more robust environment. What was that experience like for you, and how could you compare it potentially to at-home hockey when we actually are in full gear?
Right, yeah. So in Canada, we do have a club system, and it's very fun. I would say it's a little bit more at the social level. So it's nice to connect with friends that way. But in Europe, it really takes hockey to the next level. And they do a really good job of making you feel very professional. They've got access to top level coaches. We have very regimented training schedules. We're also a part of the club, which it's quite nice from a social aspect. You feel very welcomed, and as a foreigner especially, it's nice to have those connections when you do go abroad. But yeah, overall my experience in Europe has been really great. I feel like with how competitive the leagues are over there, I've really improved as a player, and I think it's really showed from our program point of view how much we have all improved, and the results that we achieved together were really something. So.
And would you say for a young player, again, maybe to the best we can, ignoring the current environment, knowing that we can't go out and compete right now, but in the future, would you recommend to a young athlete, maybe in the early 20s, looking to raise their level of competition, to try to play in a European environment?
Definitely. Yeah. Aside from the level being so good over there, it's also really beneficial to go abroad because in every country they have a different style of hockey. And so I actually played 3 years ago in Germany, and they are a very sort of structured style of hockey there. It's very defensive minded, and they've got a lot of tactics going on. And then moving to Belgium, it was completely different. They're very skill focused and a little bit faster paced in terms of the sort of fitness aspect of the game. So I feel like going abroad, you really get a sense of the different styles, and you can pick up little bits from each one and add those to your game as you go along.
Cool. So as we mentioned off the intro, you joined the program in 2011. You also played NCAA hockey at Stanford. So seems like you've really almost done it all. You've played in Europe and you've played college hockey. Maybe we could just rewind to your college days. And last week we talked with Allison Lee, your teammate, about playing in the university system in Canada. Maybe you could talk a little bit about your experience playing NCAA hockey and how, even though you might not be able to give firsthand experience, how it might compare to the Canadian system.
Of course. Yeah. So going to Stanford was a very exciting opportunity. Originally, I really was intrigued by the academics there. But when I realized they were so well regarded in the sports world as well, I jumped at the opportunity. And it was my first taste of being a full-on professional athlete because we really did train 5 hours a day together. And the way that the NCAA league is set out, you end up doing quite a bit of travel, especially with a school like Stanford that's on the West Coast, and when field hockey is so competitive in the East. We were actually a part of a conference that was based on the East Coast of the United States. So every second weekend we would get on a plane, we would fly to Boston or Maine or just totally across the country, and I learned a lot of things from that. I had to be very planned and manage my time really well, and make sure I was checking in with professors to stay on top of things academically. So it was definitely a very busy time, but it was also really exciting. And I just enjoyed the professionalism of it all. It was really high level, intense, motivating. And I also came out of there with some of my best friends. So really a great experience.
Yeah, you probably thought you'd never miss cross-continental flights so much as we do right now, eh?
Totally. Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about this off air before we hopped on the interview, but you've started a new initiative called Mission to Move, and maybe you could just maybe walk me through what this entails, what the program's all about, who's the target, and how you kind of came to start this program.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about it. What happened was in the last couple weeks, as I was saying, I've been getting really creative with my working out modalities, and I've been doing some things with my mom, who doesn't have quite as much experience with the weightlifting and the different styles of working out. So she kind of inspired me a little bit because she was saying that some other people she knew were running out of ideas. And so I started this Mission to Move because I'd like to inspire others to keep moving and stay active, and hopefully sort of ignite their passion to keep doing that through exciting new exercises. So what I'm doing are some Zoom workouts every Saturday at 8:30 in the morning PST. All you need are 2 5-pound weights and a chair and your lovely self. And we'll go through half an hour of kind of a high-intensity, fun workout with tunes and groove together. And the last sort of piece of it is that if the people joining in do feel like they're hoping to help others in this pandemic situation, they're feeling a little bit generous, I have started a GoFundMe fundraising page, so any donations are welcome.
That's an awesome initiative. I think it's really cool that you're being very inclusive and getting people moving as well, especially during a time when we might not be out at the gym or out on the field as much as we would have been a few months ago. I think that's really cool. So good on you for doing that. So I have a question about what you could maybe say to young athletes. I know this time is, we don't really know what the future holds for us for as far as when we next get out on the field for a true competition. And that, many of the youth athletes in their late teens and early 20s are going to have their national championship postponed, canceled. Maybe you could talk sort of directly to young athletes in this country about how they can stay in it, stay motivated, and what sort of the next steps could look like.
Of course. Yeah, so personally, actually, I often take my field hockey stick and go down to, there's a concrete lacrosse box about 5 minutes from where I live. And because I don't really have access to a field hockey turf, I find that getting out and just doing little drills on my own, practicing skills, getting some music pumping, it's a really good way to remind myself how much I love the sport, and just keeping it fun and improving on my own is a really great way to stay motivated and keep working towards those future goals. As well, just starting to think about, those goals and what you might be hoping to achieve down the road. Sometimes it's good to have some introspection and take this time to really think about what you might want out of the sport. Write down some things that inspire you, and maybe even making connections too. Like if you're a young high school student and you're looking to go abroad and play in the NCAA, for example, like I did, you can start reaching out, send emails, make some phone calls with coaches or other players that you know that might have gone through the NCAA system, and start getting a feel for what that might be like. Because I do find that networking can be really beneficial in the long run, and if you start putting the feelers out, then it's a good sort of foundation to build on as you go forward.
Yeah, well said. Rewinding back to the beginning of your national team career, you started in 2011. You also played on the junior national team. For someone that's had roughly a 10-year career on the national team, how have you felt that you've been able to sort of avoid what we might call burning out? How have you managed to stay motivated and keep in it over a 10-year career? Because we do see a lot of athletes that come in and out of the program and might not have the longevity of someone like yourself.
For sure, yeah. I think there's kind of two things I can attribute that to. The first one is that throughout my career as a young athlete, I was definitely a multi-sport competitor. So even when I made the national team at age 16, I continued to play soccer, to run track and cross country, and even do a little bit of basketball on the side. So I was extremely busy, but it also meant that my sole focus wasn't always on field hockey, and I was able to learn some things in these other sports that could actually translate over to field hockey. So I always encourage people to keep playing as many sports as they can for as long as possible. And then the other thing is, as you mentioned before, I've had the opportunity to play in a lot of different places with different teammates and within different coaching environments and with different hockey styles. So I think really changing the environment that I've been in has been really helpful in keeping me excited and passionate about the game, because it's always fun meeting new people, playing with others, and learning new styles.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned different coaching environments. Just as a follow-up for that, what do you think your sort of ideal coach brings to the table? I know you probably also have done some coaching, giving back some clinics. How do you, sort of model your coaching, and what's your ideal situation for what a coach can bring to a team?
Right. That's actually a very difficult question. Yeah, I think something that's very important as a coach is to earn the trust of your players. And that's something with Giles, actually, that I really felt was apparent, was that he always had the best interest of the team in mind. And we knew day in and day out that he was doing everything he could to prepare us for success. And we could completely commit to the process because we trusted and understood what he was trying to achieve. So I think that's a really important part of coaching. And I think the other thing is, even at the highest level, field hockey has to be fun in some sense. And so it's about inserting, some different aspects or some fun little drills once in a while, or just mixing it up so that, as you were talking about, you don't ever experience that burnout, because there's always that aspect of improving and intensity and staying motivated, but you also have to insert a little bit of fun and joking around once in a while to keep it fresh.
Yeah, keeping things light never hurts.
Right. Yeah.
Looking back on your career, if you could say something to yourself, back when you were in your late teens, and now knowing all you know, with all the wisdom that you have over the last sort of decade of playing at the top level, is there any sort of advice you'd give yourself?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't be afraid to dream big. I know it might sound a bit cliche, but making the national team at age 16, I was quite young, and I wasn't afraid to dream because I guess I didn't really understand the reality or how much time and effort would go into something like qualifying for an Olympic Games. But now I see, anything is possible with a little bit of hard work and determination if you put your mind to it. So, I wouldn't be afraid to just set the bar high. And I've failed time and time again, but I feel like because I haven't been afraid to go for it, I've also learned a ton, and I have no regrets.
Well said. Switching gears and maybe just finishing off here with the current environment of the women's national team and the current goals. Obviously, after the heartbreak in the fall, the team must be resetting its batteries. And of course, with the current environment, it's impossible to ignore the lack of international exposure and competition worldwide right now, of course. But, maybe thinking ahead in the next couple of years, what's next what's next on the agenda for the women's national team, and what are the targets?
Yeah, so as you said, there is a lot of uncertainty. At the moment, we don't have a coach, and we're not really sure where or how the training or actually the travel and international competition is going to pan out. So for a lot of us, we're a little bit in limbo at the moment. I think, of course, as always, the goals will be to keep moving towards the major events. So next up, 2022, we've got the Commonwealth Games and then the World Cup. And our women's team hasn't qualified for the World Cup in over 20 years. So that would be a really exciting achievement if we could get there. And yeah, I think we're just really excited to get back on the turf whenever we can and get the ball rolling again.
Yeah, well said. And maybe just lastly, aside from getting back out in the field, aside from hockey, as things start to loosen a little bit, especially in BC where you are, I guess obviously not fully loosened the restrictions yet, but when we do get there, what are you most looking forward to doing? Not hockey related.
Oh, not hockey related. Recently I've actually been thinking a little bit about life beyond hockey. I'm definitely not ready to retire from the women's national team just yet, but it is exciting to sort of dive into what life could look like with a job. So I've been thinking about, reaching out to some people to organize an internship or build my resume in some way and just keep working towards a career. So I'm excited to network and hopefully land some sort of position that can prepare me for that next step.
Awesome. Well, Maddie, thank you so much for catching up. That was a ton of fun, and best of luck with the Mission to Move initiative.
Okay.
And thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you so much.